locked away in the tower for being fat, until the alpha vampire carried her out. In the tallest, loneliest tower of the castle, Isolde sat by the small window, her knees pulled to her chest, staring out at the darkening sky. She had lived in this tower for as long as she could remember, locked away not because of any crime, but because of her size. Her relatives, obsessed with appearances, had decided she was too fat to ever marry, too heavy to ever be seen as beautiful. So they had left her here, where no one would look at her, where no one would remember her name. The tower was cold. The stones seemed to hum with a quiet sadness, echoing the loneliness that had wrapped around her heart like a thick fog. She spent her days sewing, reading the old books left by past prisoners, and talking to the shadows on the walls as if they were friends. She had learned to be quiet, to watch the world from her high window without ever participating in it. Yet, despite her isolation, Isolde was not weak. She had a sharp mind and a gentle heart, and she had learned to survive in ways that her relatives could never imagine. She dreamed of the world beyond the tower, imagining what it would be like to walk freely through the forest, to see the sun touch the rivers, and to meet someone who could see her for who she truly was, not just for the shape of her body. One evening, as the sky turned a deep purple and the stars began to shine, she heard a sound she had never expected, the faint rustle of wings. She turned toward the window, and there, perched on the ledge, was a figure unlike anything she had ever seen. He was tall and strong, with eyes that seemed to hold centuries of secrets. His presence was commanding, yet strangely gentle. He was the alpha vampire, Kale, a being of legend and fear, who ruled over the cursed lands beyond the mountains. Who are you?" Isolde whispered, her voice trembling. Kale's eyes studied her with intensity, and a faint smile curved his lips. "I am Kale," he said, his voice deep and smooth like the night itself. "I have come for you." Isolde's heart pounded. Fear and curiosity twisted together inside her. Why would you want me? I am nothing but a prisoner here." "You are not nothing," Kale replied, his gaze unwavering. "You are more than the world has ever allowed you to be. I see you, truly see you." Before she could respond, Kale's hand reached out, and with a speed that seemed impossible, he scaled the side of the tower and entered through her window. Isolde froze, unsure whether to run or to trust him. He did not approach her with violence, but with a strength that promised both protection and danger. "Do you wish to leave this place?" he asked. Isolde hesitated. All her life she had dreamed of freedom, but freedom had always seemed impossible. And now it was standing before her, dark and commanding, yet offering her a chance she had never thought she would have. I do," she whispered, her voice shaking. Kale nodded. "Then you will come with me. I will carry you out of this prison." With that, he lifted her in his arms as if she weighed nothing at all. The tower seemed to shrink around them as he moved, shadows bending and twisting in response to his presence. Isolde felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. She was leaving the place that had been her cage for so long, but she was stepping into a world she did not yet understand, guided by a being she barely knew. As they descended, the wind tore at her hair, and the forest below seemed alive, whispering secrets in a language she could almost understand. The castle that had been her home, and her prison, grew smaller and smaller until it was just a silhouette against the starry sky. When they reached the forest floor, Kale set her down gently. "Stay close to me," he said. "There are dangers here, but I will protect you." Isolde looked around. The forest was alive with shadows and movement. Strange creatures flitted among the trees, and the air was thick with magic and mystery. She felt a shiver run down her spine, but it was not entirely from fear. There was excitement in the unknown, a thrill that made her heart race. "Where are we going?" she asked. "To my home," Kale replied. "A place where you will be safe, where you can learn to see yourself as I see you." As they moved through the forest, Isolde began to notice more about Kale. His presence was commanding, but there was a sadness in his eyes, a loneliness that seemed as deep as the night around them. She felt a pang of sympathy, even though she barely knew him. She wondered what kind of life he had lived, alone for centuries, feared by all and touched by none. "Why me?" she asked quietly. "Why not someone else?" Cale looked at her, and for a moment he seemed to hesitate, as if weighing his words carefully. "Because you are different. You have strength where others see weakness. You have courage where others see fear. And you have a heart that can heal the shadows I carry." Isolde's cheeks flushed. She had never been told anything like that before. Even in the tower, where she had tried to find beauty in herself, she had never truly believed anyone could see her worth. But Cale's words stirred something inside her, a hope she had thought long dead. They walked deeper into the forest, and the night grew darker, the trees taller and more mysterious. Strange lights flickered in the distance, like lanterns held by unseen hands. The sounds of the forest were both beautiful and terrifying: the rustle of leaves, the call of distant creatures, the whisper of wind that seemed almost like voices. After what felt like hours, they reached a place that seemed to glow with a faint, otherworldly light. It was Cale's citadel, an ancient structure carved from black stone and surrounded by cliffs. The walls were high, and the gates were heavy, but the light that shimmered from within promised safety, knowledge, and secrets that had been hidden for centuries. Cale opened the gates and they passed through. Inside, the citadel was unlike anything Isolde had imagined. The halls were vast, filled with shadows that seemed to move with a life of their own. Ancient tapestries lined the walls, depicting battles, kings, and creatures that had long since vanished from the world. The air was cool and smelled faintly of roses and old magic. "You will be safe here," Cale said, his hand brushing hers briefly as they walked. "No one will harm you, and in time you will learn your own power, your own strength." Isolde's heart pounded. She had left her tower, her prison, and stepped into a world she had only dreamed of. She was afraid, yes, but she was also exhilarated. For the first time in her life, she felt seen, truly seen, by someone who could understand the weight she carried inside. As they reached the top of a spiral staircase, a distant sound echoed through the halls, a soft, haunting melody that seemed to pull at her heart. She turned to Cale. "What is that?" she asked. "An old song," he replied. "It tells of love and loss, courage and fear. It is a warning and it is a promise." Isolde listened, feeling the melody weave through her soul. She had been locked away, hidden from the world, but now, carried by a being of darkness and power, she was stepping into her own story. One she had never imagined, one that was only just beginning. Cale stopped at a large door carved from dark wood, covered in intricate symbols that glowed faintly in the moonlight streaming through the windows. "This will be your room," he said. "Rest, for tomorrow begins a new life." Isolde stepped inside and looked around. The room was warm, with soft light and a large bed, books stacked on shelves, and a window that looked out over the mountains and forests. She felt a strange mix of relief and anticipation. Her tower had been cold, lonely, and dark. Here she could breathe, she could think, she could begin to understand the world she had never known. As she sat on the edge of the bed, Cale stood at the door, watching her with an intensity that made her heart flutter. "You are safe," he said again. "But the world outside is not. You must be ready." Isolde nodded, unsure if she could ever be ready for what was to come. But one thing was certain: she would never be the same. The tower, the judgment, the loneliness, they were behind her. Ahead lay a life of mystery, danger, and perhaps love. And for the first time she felt the spark of hope. High above, the storm clouds parted just enough to reveal the first stars of night, shining faintly like whispers of promise. Somewhere deep in the citadel, shadows stirred, as if the walls themselves were aware of the change. Isolde closed her eyes, letting the night's quiet surround her. She had been locked away, forgotten, and judged. But now, carried from her prison by the alpha vampire, she was stepping into a story that was larger than she had ever imagined. A story of courage, magic, and a bond that could defy even centuries of darkness. And somewhere in the silence, Kale's voice echoed in her mind, a reminder she would never forget. Her story was just beginning, and she would never be the same again. The next morning, the first rays of sunlight barely touched the jagged mountains surrounding Kale's citadel. Inside, the halls were silent, except for the faint hum of magic that lingered in every corner. Isolde awoke slowly, the warmth of the room still clinging to her. The bed beneath her was soft, unlike the cold stone of the tower she had left behind. But more than comfort, she felt something she had never known: freedom. She sat up and looked around. Books lined the walls, ancient tomes filled with stories of kingdoms, battles, and magic. The room smelled faintly of herbs and old parchment. It was a strange and wonderful place, and for the first time in her life, she felt the world was bigger than her prison. Kale stood silently in the doorway watching her. His dark eyes seemed endless, carrying centuries of secrets, loneliness, and power. He did not speak at first. Instead, he allowed her to wake fully, to take in the new world she had been brought into. "You are awake," he said finally, his voice calm but commanding. I am," Isolde replied, her voice quiet. She felt nervous around him, yet also strangely safe. Where exactly am I?" Kale walked closer, his movements smooth and confident. "You are in my home," he said simply. "This citadel has stood for centuries, hidden from the world. Here you will be safe, but the world outside is not. You must learn to protect yourself and to trust in your own strength." Isolde swallowed. She had always imagined freedom as a gentle thing, a peaceful life away from the tower. She had not imagined it would be strange, powerful, and frightening, with a man as mysterious as Kale standing over her. But there was something about him, something in the way he watched her, that made her feel both small and important at the same time. She glanced at the window. Beyond the citadel walls, the forest stretched for miles, dark and alive. Shadows moved in the trees, shifting with the wind. Birds of strange colors flew overhead, and faint glimmers of light, like fireflies but brighter, danced in the distance. Kale noticed her gaze. "The forest is alive," he said. "There is magic here, older than any kingdom. Some of it is beautiful, some of it dangerous. You must learn to see both." I don't know if I can," Isolde admitted. Her hands trembled slightly. "I have never been outside the tower. I've never seen the world." Kale's eyes softened, and for a moment he looked less like a predator and more like a guardian. "Then you will learn," he said, "and I will be with you. But first, you must see yourself clearly, not as the world sees you, but as you truly are." Isolde's heart beat faster. She had never been seen truly, not even by her own family. And now, someone powerful, someone feared by all, told her he saw her, her mind, her heart, her courage. It was overwhelming. As the day passed, Kale led her through the citadel. The halls were vast, echoing with whispers of the past. Statues of kings and warriors lined the corridors, their eyes seeming to follow her as she walked. Tapestries depicted battles and celebrations, moments of glory and sorrow frozen in thread. Kale spoke little, but when he did, his words were precise and heavy with meaning. He told her of the citadel's history, of the vampire line he led, and of the curse that had shadowed his family for generations. Each story was filled with both beauty and pain, and Isolde listened intently, absorbing every detail. "What is this curse?" she asked finally, after a long silence. Kale stopped in front of a grand mirror, its frame carved with strange symbols. His reflection stared back at him and then at her. "My family was cursed long ago," he said. "Immortality was given to us, but at a cost. We are bound by shadows, unable to fully connect with the world or with love. Some of us lose ourselves entirely." Isolde frowned. "And you are not lost," he shook his head slowly. "I have been close. Loneliness has been my companion for centuries, but you are different. You may be the one to change everything." Her cheeks warmed. She had never imagined that anyone could think her important. The weight of her tower life, years of rejection, loneliness, and shame, pressed on her, but Kale's words were like a balm. healing parts of her she had long forgotten. Later, they reached the library, a vast chamber filled with books from floor to ceiling. Kale gestured to the shelves. "Knowledge is power," he said. "You must learn, for the world outside will test you, and soon danger will come to us. The world does not like what it cannot control." Isolde approached the shelves, running her fingers along the spines. The smell of old paper and ink made her feel alive in a way she had never experienced in the tower. She pulled down a book at random, opening it to a page that spoke of ancient prophecies and the power of mortals to influence immortals. Her heart skipped a beat. The words seemed to speak to her directly. "A mortal shunned and underestimated will shape the fate of the cursed line. Through courage and love she may bring salvation or doom." She looked at Kale. Does this mean me?" she asked. Kale's eyes darkened and he nodded slowly. "It may," he said, "but do not fear. You have strength you do not yet know, and I will not let harm come to you." Isolde's mind raced. A prophecy, her. She had been locked in a tower for years, unseen, unloved, and judged. And now she might hold the key to changing the fate of a powerful vampire line. The weight of the responsibility pressed on her, but at the same time she felt something new. A sense of purpose, a sense that her life mattered. As the evening came, Kale led her to the inner courtyard. The moon rose over the mountains, casting silver light over the black stone of the citadel. The shadows were long and moving, and the air was thick with magic. "You must learn to listen to the shadows," Kale said. "They speak to those who are willing to hear. They will guide you, warn you, and sometimes protect you, but you must trust them and trust yourself." Isolde nodded, unsure if she could, but willing to try. She stepped into the moonlight, feeling the wind on her face, feeling alive for the first time in years. The shadows seemed to swirl around her, whispering secrets she could almost understand. Suddenly, a sound broke the quiet, a distant rustle in the forest, a faint cry that made her heart skip. Kale tensed, his hand moving instinctively toward the hidden dagger at his belt. "Trouble?" Isolde asked, her voice small but steady. Kale's eyes narrowed. "Assassins. Jealous nobles from your kingdom. They will not forgive what they think they have lost, and they will come for you." Fear surged through Isolde, but it was mixed with something else, determination. She would not be locked away again. She would not be hidden from the world. She had come this far, and she would stand by Kale, learning, growing, and fighting if she had to. The night deepened, and the first attack came. Shadows moved through the trees, figures cloaked in dark armor, approaching the citadel with silent, deadly precision. Kale placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "Stay behind me," he said. "I will protect you." Isolde nodded, her heart racing. But she did not hide. Instead, she felt a strange courage rising in her chest, a courage she had never known in the tower. She would face this danger, not as a prisoner, but as someone who had finally begun to find her own strength. The attackers reached the walls, but Kale moved like a shadow himself, powerful and fast, repelling them with skill and precision. Isolde watched, fascinated and terrified, as he fought. She realized then that he was not just powerful in legend. He was powerful in every sense, a being of darkness and light, capable of protecting, teaching, and guiding her in a world she was only beginning to understand. When the battle ended, the courtyard was quiet again. The attackers had been driven off, but their presence was a warning. The world outside the citadel would not leave them alone. Danger was real, and Isolde would need every ounce of courage, wisdom, and strength she could summon. Kale turned to her, his dark eyes softening. "You are safe for now," he said, "but the prophecy is real. And soon you will have to decide how far you are willing to go to change destiny, not just for me, but for yourself." Isolde's heart pounded. She had come so far in one day, leaving her tower, discovering a world of magic, learning of a prophecy, and facing real danger. And yet she felt alive, truly alive for the first time. The night stretched on, shadows flickering across the walls of the citadel. Isolde and Kale stood together in the moonlight, bound by a growing connection neither fully understood. The storm of their lives had only just begun, but one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. And somewhere deep in the forest, unseen eyes watched, waiting, as if the world itself knew that this mortal woman and the alpha vampire were about to change everything. The moon hung low over the mountains, casting a silver glow on the citadel. Shadows stretched across the halls, twisting and bending as if alive. Inside, Isolde moved quietly, her heart pounding with both excitement and fear. She had learned much in the past days, about Kale, about the citadel, and about herself. But she also knew that the calm could not last. Danger lingered, waiting for the slightest chance to strike. Kale had trained her to move through the halls silently, to listen to the whispers of the shadows, and to read the signs of the forest. She was no longer the timid girl locked away in the tower. She was becoming strong, capable, and aware. Still, there was a tension she could not ignore, a darkness pressing against the edges of her newfound courage. "You are restless," Kale said, his voice breaking the silence. He appeared from the shadows, his eyes dark and unreadable. I think I hear something," Isolde admitted. "In the forest or maybe the walls, I am not sure." Kale's gaze sharpened. He moved to the window and looked out, his expression hardening. "They are coming," he said quietly. "The same ones who tried before. They will not stop until they take you or destroy me." Fear surged in Isolde, but alongside it came a strange thrill. She had left the tower, she had faced the unknown, and now she was standing at the edge of a new life where courage was her only ally. "What do we do?" she asked. Kale stepped closer, his presence both commanding and comforting. "We defend the citadel. You will help me. Trust yourself as I trust you." The first attack came before the night was fully dark. Shadows moved like whispers among the trees, figures cloaked in black, armed with weapons that glinted under the moonlight. Kale moved like a shadow himself, strong and swift, intercepting their attacks with precision. Isolde watched, heart racing, but she did not hide. She remembered the lessons Kale had taught her: to move silently, to observe, and to trust her instincts. When one of the attackers tried to slip past Kale, she stepped forward, using a small trick she had learned, creating noise with a stone to draw the figure's attention. The attacker stumbled, giving Kale the opening he needed. "You are learning faster than I expected," Kale said, his eyes briefly softening as he looked at her. Isolde flushed but kept moving. Each time an attacker approached, she felt her fear transform into focus. Her hands shook, but her mind was clear. She realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. When the battle ended, the courtyard was quiet, except for the heavy breathing of those who had survived. The attackers had been driven off, but the threat lingered. Kale approached Isolde, his hand brushing hers as he spoke. "You did well," he said. "Bravery is not enough, but it is a start. You have more power than you know." Isolde's heart raced. She had never thought of herself as powerful, and yet here she was, standing beside Kale, defending the citadel. The feeling was intoxicating, a mix of fear, pride, and something else she could not name. After the battle, Kale led her to the inner library. The walls were lined with ancient books, and the air smelled of parchment and magic. He opened a large tome, its pages filled with symbols and prophecies. "This is why you are here," he said, pointing to a passage that spoke of a mortal woman who could change the fate of the cursed vampire line. "You may bring redemption or destruction. The choice is yours." Isolde read the words, her hands trembling. She had never imagined that she could be part of something so important. The weight of responsibility pressed on her, but she also felt a strange hope. Perhaps she could make a difference, not just for Kale, but for the world itself. "You must decide what you are willing to risk," Kale continued. "Courage is not enough. Love is not enough. You must understand the strength of your own heart." Isolde looked up, meeting his gaze. There was intensity in his eyes, a fire that made her breath catch. I don't know if I can," she admitted. Kale stepped closer, his voice softening. You already can, you just need to believe it. For a moment, silence hung between them. The storm outside seemed to echo their unspoken words, the wind shaking the windows and the shadows bending as if listening. Then Kale extended his hand. Come, he said. There is something you must see. He led her to a hidden passage beneath the citadel, a place she had never been. The walls glowed faintly, covered with ancient runes that pulsed with a soft, silver light. The air was thick with magic, and Isolde felt it hum through her veins, filling her with both fear and wonder. This is the heart of the citadel, Kale explained. Here, the shadows speak most clearly. They will show you what you need to know. Isolde stepped forward, her hand brushing against the cold stone. The runes flared at her touch, and a vision filled her mind. A great battle, a woman standing in the center, surrounded by shadows and light, holding the fate of a cursed line in her hands. She gasped, stumbling backward. Is this me? Kale nodded. Yes, you are stronger than you think, but the path will not be easy. Shadows will challenge you. Fear will follow you. You must face both, and you must trust in your own heart. Isolde's chest tightened. She had spent her life in a tower, hidden and judged, never allowed to see herself as more than her appearance. And now, she was standing on the edge of a destiny that could change everything. Before she could speak, a sudden noise echoed through the passage, a faint rustle followed by the click of metal on stone. Assassins had found their way inside. Kale's expression darkened, and he moved swiftly to protect her. Stay behind me, he commanded, but be ready. You will need to act. Isolde nodded, her fear transforming once again into focus. She followed Kale, her steps careful but deliberate. As the attackers approached, she remembered the lessons he had taught her. The shadows could be allies if she listened. She closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the pulse of the citadel, the whispers of the walls, and the energy of the runes beneath her feet. Then she acted. She dropped a handful of powder she had found in the library, a mixture of herbs and crushed crystals, and the air around the attackers shimmered and confused them. Kale struck quickly, incapacitating them with ease. When the battle ended, silence returned to the citadel. The danger had passed, but the tension remained. Kale turned to her, his dark eyes holding both admiration and concern. You are ready, he said, but this is only the beginning. The world outside will test you, and the shadows inside will not always be forgiving. Isolde's heart beat fast. She had faced danger, learned to trust herself, and stood beside Kale as an equal, not as a prisoner. And yet, she knew he was right. The path ahead would not be easy. That night they stood on the balcony of the citadel, looking out over the moonlit forest. The wind tugged at her hair, and the shadows stretched like long fingers across the land. Kale placed a hand on her shoulder, and she felt a warmth she had never known. You have changed already, he said softly. You see yourself differently now. The world may not, but you do, and that is what matters. Isolde looked at him, her heart swelling with emotions she could not name. Fear, courage, gratitude, and something deeper, something that tugged at her soul. I will try, she whispered. Kale's eyes softened, and for a moment he looked less like an immortal predator and more like a man who had waited centuries for someone to understand him. You already have, he said. The night deepened, and the shadows of the forest seemed to lean closer, as if watching, waiting. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, and the sound echoed through the mountains like a warning. Isolde knew that the prophecy, the danger, and the shadows were real, but she also knew she was not alone. Kale was beside her, and for the first time she felt truly alive, seen, valued, and ready to face whatever darkness came next. And somewhere deep within the citadel, the ancient magic whispered, "The mortal woman walks the path of shadows and light. The heart of the cursed line will be tested. The choice is hers." Isolde tightened her grip on the balcony railing, feeling the wind in her hair, feeling the pulse of her own courage. She had left the tower behind, faced danger, and begun to see herself as she truly was. And she knew one thing for certain. Nothing, not even the darkness of the world, could stop her now. But the night was far from over, and the true test of her heart was only just beginning. The wind screamed through the mountains, carrying the scent of rain and the faint metallic tang of danger. Isolde stood on the balcony of Kale's citadel, the storm battering her face with cold drops of rain. She had faced fear before, learned to trust herself, and discovered courage she never knew she had, but tonight felt different. The air was heavy, almost alive, and the shadows of the forest seemed to writhe with a life of their own. Kale appeared beside her, his dark cloak whipping around him in the storm. His eyes, deep and unreadable, held both concern and determination. "They are coming," he said simply. "The nobles who hunted you, the ones who fear what they cannot control, they will not stop until they take you or destroy us." Isolde swallowed hard. She had left the tower, survived danger, and learned to trust her instincts. Yet the weight of what was coming pressed on her like the heaviest stone. She felt fear, but this time it was tempered with strength. She had grown, she had a purpose. "Then we will face them," she said, her voice firm. "Together." Kale's eyes softened for a brief moment. "Together," he echoed. They moved through the halls, their footsteps silent on the cold stone. The citadel was alive with magic and shadows, as if the building itself knew the storm approaching. Isolde felt the pulse of the walls, the energy of the runes, and the whispers of ancient spirits. She had learned to listen to them, to trust their guidance. "The prophecy," she said quietly, glancing at Kale. Do you think I can really change your fate?" Kale's gaze held hers, steady and unwavering. "I do not know," he admitted, "but I know you are capable of more than you imagine. That alone is enough to give hope." The first wave of attackers arrived as the sun dipped below the mountains, turning the sky into a canvas of red and black. Figures cloaked in dark armor emerged from the trees, moving with silent precision. They carried weapons and torches, intent clear in every movement. Kale stepped forward, his presence commanding, and the shadows seemed to swirl around him, protective and alive. "Stay behind me," he instructed, though his tone held no fear, only resolve. Isolde's heart pounded, but she did not step back. She had trained, observed, and grown stronger. She would not be hidden again. She would stand beside him. As the attackers moved closer, she noticed the subtle shifts in the shadows, the way they responded to Kale's energy and to hers. "Now," Kale whispered. Isolde focused, extending her hands toward the shadows as she had practiced. They moved like water around her, protective and alive, confusing the attackers, making them stumble and falter. Kale struck with speed and precision, disarming the intruders and driving them back. It was not violence that saved them, it was unity. Kale's power, Isolde's courage, and the Citadel's magic all working together. And in that moment, Isolde realized something profound. True strength did not come from fear or hatred. It came from understanding, trust, and love. The last of the attackers fled, and silence returned to the citadel. Rain pelted the walls, lightning splitting the sky, but the danger had passed for now. Kale turned to Isolde, his dark eyes filled with both pride and something she could not name. "You are ready," he said. "The prophecy will test us further, but you have proven yourself." Isolde's chest rose and fell rapidly. She had faced death and fear, and yet she had not broken. I could not have done it without you," she said softly. Kale shook his head. "No, you did it yourself. I only guided you. Courage and heart are yours." The storm began to ease, and the first light of dawn touched the citadel walls. The shadows receded, leaving the halls quiet and still. Kale led Isolde to the highest tower, the same place where she had once been imprisoned. Now it was a place of choice, a place of transformation. "This was your prison," Kale said, gesturing to the empty tower. "And now it is your proving ground. You have faced fear, danger, and the unknown, and you have grown." Isolde stepped forward, feeling the stone beneath her feet, feeling the wind in her hair, feeling the power of the citadel around her. She had been hidden, judged, and forgotten, but now she was free. Not just from the tower, but from the limitations the world had tried to place on her. "I see it now," she whispered. "I am not what they said I was, I am more." Kale smiled faintly, a rare warmth in his expression. "Yes, you are more, and together we can face what comes next." The prophecy had warned of a great choice, a moment where the mortal woman could either redeem or doom the cursed line. Isolde felt the weight of that choice pressing on her, but it did not frighten her now. She had faced fear, learned trust, and embraced her own strength. Whatever the choice, she would act with courage. As they stood together, the citadel seemed to hum with approval. The walls, the runes, the shadows, all had witnessed her growth. Kale reached for her hand and she placed hers in his. It was not a gesture of dependency, but of partnership, of equality. They were bound not by need, but by understanding and shared purpose. The final test came suddenly. From the depths of the forest, a figure emerged, a dark being, twisted by jealousy and fear, the one responsible for the curse that had haunted Kale's line for centuries. It was not a mortal threat, but a shadow of the past, a reflection of the darkness that had always lingered. "You think you can change fate," the figure hissed. Its voice was like the rustle of dead leaves, cold and sharp. "Centuries of power, centuries of pain, and you, a mortal, would undo it all." Isolde stood firm, her hand tightening in Kale's. "I am not here to undo," she said. "I am here to heal, to change what was broken and to create something new." The figure laughed, a sound that chilled the blood. Shadows swirled around it, twisting and reaching, trying to overwhelm the tower. But Isolde and Kale stood together, the light of their courage and bond pushing back the darkness. For a moment, nothing moved but the wind and the storm. And then, slowly, the shadows began to retreat. The dark figure faltered, its power no match for the unity of mortal courage and immortal strength. "You have done it," Kale whispered. "You have faced the prophecy, and you have chosen wisely." Isolde exhaled, relief flooding through her. She had faced fear, danger, and doubt, and she had emerged stronger, not just for Kale, but for herself. She had discovered her own power, her own voice, and her own worth. The storm cleared completely, and sunlight broke over the mountains, casting golden light across the citadel. The shadows, once heavy and threatening, now danced gently, reflecting a peace that had not been felt for centuries. Kale carried her to the balcony, where the first flowers of spring bloomed despite the ruins around them. "You have changed everything," he said softly, "and in doing so you have changed me as well." Isolde looked at him, her heart full. "We have changed together," she said. "I am not alone anymore." Kale's eyes softened, and for the first time in centuries he allowed himself a rare smile. "Nor am I," he said. They stood there, hand in hand, looking out over the lands below. The tower, once a symbol of confinement and shame, was now a symbol of transformation, courage, and hope. The prophecy had been fulfilled, not by destruction, but by love, trust, and the willingness to face the shadows within and without. Isolde felt the wind on her face, carrying with it the scent of the forest, the citadel, and something she could not name but recognized instantly: freedom. Not just the absence of chains, but the presence of choice, strength, and purpose. Kale drew her closer, not to possess, but to protect, support, and share this new life. "The world may still judge us," he said quietly, "but it cannot take what we have discovered here. The bond we share, the courage we carry, it is beyond their reach." Isolde leaned against him, feeling the pulse of his strength and the warmth of his presence. "Then we will face it," she said. "Together, always." The sun rose fully over the mountains, bathing the citadel in golden light. Shadows receded completely, leaving only the soft hum of magic and life. The tower, the storm, the danger, all had been overcome. And for the first time, Isolde and Kale could see a future filled not with fear, but with possibility, love, and transformation. And somewhere deep in the citadel, the ancient runes pulsed once more, as if whispering their approval. "The mortal woman has walked the path of courage and love. The cursed line is redeemed. A new dawn begins. Isolde closed her eyes and breathed deeply. She had been locked away, hidden and underestimated. But now she was free, not just in body but in spirit. She had faced the shadows, embraced her heart, and discovered a life beyond the tower. Kale's voice, soft and steady, echoed in her mind. We are no longer prisoners of the past. Our story begins now together. And with that, hand in hand, they stepped forward into the light, leaving the tower, the shadows, and the fears of the past behind. A new life awaited, a life of courage, magic, love, and endless possibility.